Tuesday morning, Washington, D.C., a surprise announcement from former President Donald J. Trump sends shockwaves through political circles and foreign policy communities around the world. In a single press release, Trump has unveiled two major national security appointments that many analysts see as a blueprint for his potential second term: Congressman Michael Waltz nominated as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and Senator Marco Rubio appointed as National Security Advisor. The decisions, unveiled without leaks or advance notice, stunned reporters and even some in Trump's own party. But for those who've tracked his foreign policy leanings, the message was unmistakable. This is Trump doubling down on his America First doctrine, surrounding himself with loyalists known for hardline positions on China, Iran, and multilateral diplomacy. It is also a dramatic reshaping of how the United States may engage with the world if Trump returns to power. These are not just names on a list. They are signals, to allies, to adversaries, and to American voters. What kind of future do these appointments suggest for U.S. foreign policy? Who are the men now poised to lead America's voice on the global stage? And what are the broader political consequences just months before one of the most consequential elections in modern history? Over the next 30 minutes, we break it down. This is your in-depth report on Trump's diplomatic pivot, and what it could mean for the world. Michael Waltz's journey to this nomination is anything but conventional. Before he ever stepped into the halls of Congress, Waltz had already built a formidable resume: combat veteran, Green Beret, counterterrorism advisor, and author. He served multiple combat tours in Afghanistan, earning a Bronze Star with valor, and was one of the first Green Berets to work in the White House as a defense policy director. His experience spans tactical combat and strategic planning, making him one of the few elected officials with first-hand knowledge of modern warfare and international operations. Those who've served with him describe Waltz as relentless, focused, and fiercely patriotic, qualities that now define his political brand. In 2018, Waltz became the first Green Beret elected to Congress. Since then, he's developed a reputation for being one of the most outspoken foreign policy hawks in the Republican Party. His focus has consistently zeroed in on threats posed by China, the erosion of American power in multilateral institutions, and what he sees as a growing disconnect between diplomacy and American values. Waltz has pushed for stronger support of Taiwan, sanctions against Iran, and accountability for regimes accused of human rights abuses. He's introduced legislation aimed at curbing Chinese influence in U.S. universities and cracking down on foreign cyber espionage. In nominating Waltz to the United Nations, Trump is not simply choosing a diplomat, he is positioning a soldier-statesman in one of the most visible global roles. The message is clear: the era of cautious, consensus-driven diplomacy may be coming to an end. Waltz has frequently criticized the United Nations as bloated and ineffectual, especially in its handling of global crises like Syria, Ukraine, and North Korea. He has argued for reform, or bypass, of UN bodies that fail to align with American interests. His critics, however, warn that this posture could deepen diplomatic rifts and embolden adversaries. Should Waltz be confirmed, he would arrive at the UN at a time of profound geopolitical tension: the war in Ukraine, rising authoritarianism, global climate urgency, and an increasingly fragmented world order. His every word, vote, and stance would be scrutinized, not just by diplomats, but by the watching world. Supporters say Waltz brings clarity where others hedge, strength where others retreat. Detractors worry his appointment will undermine fragile alliances and reduce America's moral authority. But one thing is certain: this would be the most combative U.S. ambassador the United Nations has seen in years. Michael Waltz is not coming to negotiate. He's coming to reshape the stage. Marco Rubio's political arc has been anything but linear: a rapid rise, a bruising fall, and now, a strategic return to the center of power. In 2016, he stood on debate stages as one of Trump's fiercest critics, warning voters that Trump lacked the temperament and principles to lead the nation. But time, and political pragmatism, has reshaped their relationship. Since Trump's presidency, Rubio has evolved from adversary to ally. His positions on China, Cuba, and Venezuela have aligned increasingly with Trump's America First worldview. Behind the scenes, Rubio has advised the White House on Latin American policy and national security, crafting a profile as both a foreign policy hardliner and an institutional conservative. Now, as Trump's pick for national security advisor, Rubio is stepping out of the Senate and into a role that has direct access to presidential decision-making, a seat of enormous influence. His appointment is notable for multiple reasons. First, it signals that Trump is building a second-term team rooted in ideological loyalty and policy expertise. Second, it offers Rubio a political second act, a chance to shape America's security agenda without the constraints of electoral politics. Rubio has long warned about authoritarian threats abroad. He's called for stronger sanctions against Cuba, regime change in Venezuela, and an aggressive stance against Chinese surveillance and trade practices. He's also been a vocal critic of Iran, North Korea, and Russia's influence campaigns. In contrast to past national security advisors who favored diplomacy and balance, Rubio is likely to push for a more muscular approach, one that emphasizes deterrence, pressure, and preemptive policy action. Critics argue that Rubio lacks hands-on intelligence or defense experience. But supporters say his legislative background and deep engagement on foreign affairs make him uniquely equipped to manage the National Security Council. His elevation also sends a message to establishment Republicans, that Trump is willing to welcome seasoned figures into his orbit, so long as they align with his vision. At a time when global tensions are mounting, Rubio's role could define not only the tone of Trump's foreign policy but also how the United States positions itself on the world stage. A comeback is one thing. A command post in the West Wing is another. And for Marco Rubio, this is more than redemp. Thank you. Taken together, the nominations of Michael Waltz and Marco Rubio are more than personnel changes, they are declarations of intent. They represent a defining moment in how the United States may reshape its engagement with the world under a second Trump administration. Trump is not simply signaling who he trusts, he's announcing a strategic pivot in global posture. One that prioritizes directness over diplomacy, strength over subtlety, and unilateral action over collective consensus. It's a clear break from traditional norms, and a clear return to the "America First" doctrine that defined his first term. In the eyes of many analysts, Waltz and Rubio are not just appointments, they are architects of an emerging ideology. One that sees global forums like the United Nations as adversarial rather than cooperative, and that views multilateral pacts as constraints rather than commitments. Expect to see aggressive shifts in diplomatic tone and tactical posture. U.S. ambassadors may begin voting against consensus resolutions. Funding for international development agencies could be slashed. Engagement with allies may come with more demands, more conditions, and fewer compromises. This shift would likely amplify military signaling in contested regions. Increased naval deployments in the Indo-Pacific. Missile defense initiatives in Eastern Europe. Heightened cyber defense operations against foreign influence campaigns. Waltz's military background and Rubio's security orientation make this tandem uniquely positioned to accelerate the securitization of foreign policy. Economic pressure will also take center stage. The use of sanctions, tariffs, and foreign aid manipulation will become tools of enforcement rather than tools of negotiation. For example, nations that abstain from condemning authoritarian regimes or fail to align with U.S. strategic priorities could face financial repercussions. Climate diplomacy may also be redefined. While previous administrations viewed climate change as a global threat requiring cooperation, this approach would see it as an economic and strategic competition, reducing emissions not as a global duty, but as a national calculation. The appointments also raise questions about the future of long-standing institutions like NATO and the World Health Organization. Will Trump, guided by advisors who view such organizations with suspicion, continue the U.S. withdrawal from shared governance? Critics warn this approach may strain transatlantic relations and diminish America's soft power, making it harder to build global coalitions. Supporters argue the opposite, that the U.S. must stop playing referee and start playing to win. One thing is certain, if Trump returns to the Oval Office with Waltz and Rubio in key roles, the shift in foreign policy will be dramatic, not in nuance, but in structure. This will not be about tweaks. It will be about a total redesign. In that vision, diplomacy becomes strategy. Negotiation becomes leverage. And global leadership is redefined not by consensus, but by command. The unveiling of Michael Waltz and Marco Rubio as Trump's new foreign policy spearheads has sent ripples through both domestic politics and international diplomacy. In Washington, the reaction was swift and deeply divided. Republican lawmakers aligned with Trump praised the move as bold and necessary. House and Senate leaders issued statements applauding Waltz's combat experience and Rubio's legislative record, calling them defenders of American values at a time of global instability. Right-wing media heralded the picks as a foreign policy dream team, a return to strength after what they described as years of weakness and global concession. But Democrats offered a starkly different view. Leaders in both chambers condemned the nominations, warning they represent an escalation of nationalist policies that could undermine international trust. They accused Trump of appointing loyalists instead of bridge builders, and vowed to scrutinize any Senate confirmations with intense skepticism. The debate extended beyond Capitol Hill. Foreign policy think tanks lit up with competing analyses. Some warned of a coming collapse of multilateral diplomacy. Others argued that a new, assertive posture could deter aggression from nations like China and Russia. Editorial boards from major newspapers expressed concern over a hard turn toward unilateralism. Meanwhile, across the globe, the responses were equally nuanced and telling. European allies expressed cautious diplomacy. French and German leaders, while choosing their words carefully, raised concerns about the stability of U.S. commitments under another Trump administration. Diplomats in Brussels openly questioned whether NATO could survive another cycle of American retrenchment. In the Middle East, reactions were mixed. Israeli officials welcomed the appointments, particularly given Rubio's long-standing support for pro-Israel legislation. But in Iran, state media denounced the news, calling it proof that future negotiations with the U.S. would be impossible under Trump. Asian powers responded in kind. China's foreign ministry issued a stern warning, citing Waltz and Rubio's past rhetoric as inflammatory. North Korea released a statement condemning what it called imperialist theater. On the other hand, leaders in Taiwan quietly expressed relief, interpreting the shift as a sign of continued American commitment to their sovereignty. In Latin America, the tone was apprehensive. Nations like Cuba and Venezuela braced for intensified pressure, while others worried about regional instability. Even the United Nations began recalibrating. Behind closed doors, diplomats reportedly strategized how to engage, or resist, a new U.S. ambassador known more for confrontation than consensus. The world is listening, watching, and recalculating. These are not ordinary appointments. They are seismic signals. And their echoes are just beginning to be felt. Beyond diplomacy, beyond international headlines, these appointments land squarely in the heart of the 2024 presidential race. Michael Waltz and Marco Rubio are not just policy figures, they are political signals. Their elevation to Trump's inner circle speaks directly to Republican voters, particularly those concerned with national security, military strength, and America's role in a changing world. Waltz brings battlefield credibility and an unapologetically hard stance on America's enemies, a direct appeal to veterans, defense-minded voters, and swing districts in military-heavy states. His nomination could bolster Trump's image as a strong leader among undecided voters still questioning the former president's global strategy. Rubio, meanwhile, provides something else, a bridge to conservative intellectuals and establishment Republicans who were once skeptical of Trump's chaotic approach. His presence lends institutional legitimacy to Trump's foreign policy team, and appeals to Cuban American and Latino voters in key battleground states like Florida, Nevada, and Arizona. Together, these figures project competence, loyalty, and ideological clarity. They allow Trump to tell a story not of chaos, but of control. But the risks are real. Democrats have already begun painting the appointments as proof of Trump's radicalism, warning that a second term would mean global disorder and domestic division. Campaign ads are in development. Senate hearing soundbites are being clipped for prime time. Independent voters, who may support strong national defense but reject Trump's unpredictability, now find themselves facing a binary choice: institutional aggression versus diplomatic restraint. These appointments also bring energy to Trump's base. They remind voters of the core grievances that powered his first campaign: distrust of globalism, resentment toward elite diplomacy, and belief in American primacy. And perhaps most strategically, they place foreign policy at the center of the campaign, an area where Trump believes he can frame Biden as weak, indecisive, or beholden to multilateral interests. The race is tightening. The battlefield is shifting. And in this moment, every appointment is also an argument. Beyond diplomacy and international alliances, the nominations of Michael Waltz and Marco Rubio strike at the very core of the 2024 presidential campaign. These appointments are not simply administrative, they are political statements, campaign messages, and ideological banners unfurled before the electorate. For Donald Trump, this is a strategic alignment designed to consolidate power across multiple factions within the Republican Party. Waltz appeals to military veterans, national defense voters, and hardline conservatives who view diplomacy with skepticism. His combat record and no-nonsense demeanor serve as potent symbols of strength in an age of geopolitical uncertainty. In key military-heavy states like North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida, his nomination is likely to resonate deeply with voters who prize discipline and toughness. Rubio offers a different but complementary political value. Once a rival and now a trusted surrogate, he brings years of Senate experience, foreign policy fluency, and a well-established presence in Hispanic communities. As the Cuban-American son of immigrants, Rubio speaks to the anxieties and aspirations of many Latino voters, especially in states like Florida, Nevada, and Arizona, where margins are thin and turnout is critical. Their combined presence allows Trump to craft a broader, more disciplined narrative. One that moves away from accusations of chaos and toward an image of calculated, experienced governance, albeit one with sharp edges. The image projected is no longer Trump alone, but Trump surrounded by a cabinet of warriors, proven, loyal, and unapologetically nationalist. But these benefits come with risks. Democrats have already begun crafting a counter-narrative, one that paints Waltz and Rubio as architects of escalation, not security. Their track records are being combed through, past statements clipped and repurposed in campaign ads aimed at suburban moderates and independents. There's also the risk of alienating key blocks of younger voters, progressives, and internationalist centrists who favor diplomacy and multilateral engagement. To them, these appointments signal regression, a step back into a worldview that favors might over negotiation, isolation over coalition. Still, to Trump's base, this is the vision they voted for: American strength reasserted, foreign entanglements reduced, and sovereignty reclaimed. The announcements have already energized donors and loyalists, who see these moves as proof that Trump is ready to govern on day one with a team that won't compromise. The media, meanwhile, has seized on the story, further amplifying its role in shaping the narrative arc of the campaign. Foreign policy, often a footnote in domestic elections, is now front and center. Trump has made it a litmus test. His opponents have made it a warning. And undecided voters? They're now faced with a defining choice. In the final months leading to November, every headline, every confirmation hearing, every policy speech will be filtered through this moment. Because in 2024, the ballot won't just ask who should lead America, it will ask what kind of world America wants to lead. As the dust settles from Trump's double-barreled announcement, one truth emerges: this is no ordinary campaign season. The appointments of Michael Waltz and Marco Rubio aren't just news. They're a warning shot, a mission statement, and a strategic play all in one. In the weeks to come, confirmation hearings will dominate headlines. Waltz will be grilled on the Senate floor about diplomacy, war powers, and multilateralism. Rubio will be pressed on global crises, intelligence briefings, and national cohesion. Behind closed doors, foreign governments are already recalibrating, reaching out to allies, bracing for shifts in posture, preparing for either collaboration or conflict. Inside campaign war rooms, messaging strategies are evolving. Opposition researchers are building files. Endorsements are being weighed. And across America, voters are watching. From rural counties to urban centers, from military families to immigrant households, the stakes feel tangible now. What once felt theoretical has become immediate. Foreign policy, long considered a niche issue, is now kitchen table conversation. What's next is more than a political contest. It's a referendum on American identity, isolation or influence, strength or restraint, retribution or restoration. As the 2024 election draws near, the pressure will mount. Every debate, every headline, every vote cast, will help define not just who governs, but how America governs the world. Trump has made his move. The pieces are on the board. And now, the world waits.